Right. So we are on an episode of Raw Emotion. I'm your host, Derek Chappelle, and I'm excited for today's show because number one, this is going to go on YouTube. So I've been wanting to go on YouTube for quite some time now. If you haven't heard any of my previous episodes for my podcast, Raw Emotion, I suggest you go check it out. And today we've got special guests, as always, a reoccurring guest, Gaelle Lebray. Welcome, Gaelle.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
Thank you for being here again. You are the most consistent guest that I have on, and you always bring so much good content. I love having you on. Relation coach, expert, as well as you coach other things as well, but relationships is one of the main things that you do. Why don't you just go ahead and kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, just kind of remind people or first-time listeners, kind
Yes,
of, what you do.
yes. So, yes, I focus on relationship, and really relationship to yourself is really what fascinates me because then allows you to be truly yourself in relationship with others. And as much as we look at life as always with others, it's so important to be true to ourselves. And so I love empowering people about who they are and what they truly want. And so for me, this is why relationship to yourself is such key thing, to be the best of you in a relationship later down the line as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's very well spoken. Having a relationship with yourself is something that we don't even really think about, right?
True. And
But
and so from just to give a bit the background to people, so I've been coaching for quite a while now. Initially, I was in the corporate world when I started coaching and mentoring people, just as a natural default, as you would, just to bring people up and colleagues and juniors and so on, and then literally really fell in love with it. So from becoming like sort of more voluntary things, it became like more like a full-time thing.
mm,
And so I absolutely love it because for me it's so important to just get yourself in a way in that place where you just totally trust yourself, you totally know who you are. And I started with career and business and then move on to more like like relationship, as I said. And it's really about the empowerment that really sort of fascinate me, and the energy, as we've talked about before. So it's
yeah,
all
yeah.
things together. There's such a lovely lovely combo you can do with those things. It's fabulous.
Well, it makes sense how you can transition from working with business to individuals because businesses are made up of individuals. So, that's what businesses are. They're really kind of entities, right? The
Yep.
collective energy of the people that work there can determine the fate of your company, actually.
Totally. People are the assets, right? And that's
Yeah.
always what I work with my clients. And I do have a lot of people who works in a corporate world and are not truly themselves. And it has an impact on themselves in the sense, on their quality of life and everything, because then they disconnected. And also I've noticed when they reconnect with themselves, it's almost like they soar massively internally in their corporate job, because they finally don't have to wear a mask and so on all the time. So
Mm.
that's why for me it's been fabulous, and it just made sense because obviously being 20 years in investment banking world, in a way, for me that was kind of almost the knowing how you are in there, how you wear that mask all the time, how you
Mhm.
can't really be true to yourself, to really
Mm.
sort of unleashing really what's out there. And I can see through all the clients I have how blossoming they are, and that is the most important. And they tend to do sometimes the same in their relationship, where they kind of, I'm not saying they're wearing a mask, it's very different. They just tend to lose themselves potentially in those relationships.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we were going to talk about today too, losing yourself in a relationship. And man, you know what? That hit home. When you told me that subject, I first read it, I was like, okay, cool. And then I looked at it this morning. I was kind of looking up some information. I was like, damn, oh, you're talking to me directly.
And it's really interesting because they out there it tends to say that it's more women that tend to lose themselves in long-term relationship and lose their identity, but I think it's equally the same. It's guys also, especially if you're really into the person you're with and you're really into that, you kind of end up sort of losing some of yourself. And that's why when I said to people, you got to reclaim your time, reclaim your some time for yourself. I always get like some big, oh no, I can't do this because I've got the kids and I've got the husband and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. For guys, it's easier. It's easier to say, not to accept it initially, but it's easier down the line once you explain.
I feel a debate coming on.
The rationale, they go, yeah, okay, I can find some time for myself. It's a lot easier for them to say, why don't you go out with your pal and just go and spend a weekend? Or, that kind of stuff. That hit home a lot quicker than usually with my lady clients.
Okay, so you work with a lot of women clients, obviously. That's it makes sense why you have that perspective. But I can tell you from the other side, it's just as many men losing their identities in relationships as women. And that surfaces small things, just like, hey, do you want to go, you ask a guy friend, hey, do you want to go do blah, 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 whatever, this weekend or something. Oh, well, let me check with my wife first, or let me check with the boss first, those kind of things that you joke about. But it really does play a part. Like, part of my identity is with this person, which, I mean, in a sense, it is when you decide to come together as a couple. But like you said, you have to still have your individuality. And I think in long-term relationships, both sides can absolutely lose that. And I was in a 24-year marriage. Mm-hmm. From young age of 19.
Wow.
Where you don't even really know your identity as it is.
Yeah, then.
And this is really in a lot of, I was in the Air Force. So a lot of military people get married young, have kids young, and that is where their identity is. It's with their marriage, their kids, and your individuality kind of gets, just put off to the side. Not necessarily lost, but it's put off to the side, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think in any relationship, the strongest person in the relationship in terms of the character will probably unconsciously take over in a way. And the person, because there is never 100% equality. It's the reality, let's face it. And so when you get together, then suddenly you want to sort of, the let's say the men are going to be getting themselves more involved in their career, for example. As you said, you were in the force, and literally, it's like when you're in the force, you have an identity and you have a role. When you're at home, you've got an identity, you've got the same, a role. And then if you're a father, you've got an identity and another role. So they're different roles with different identities, and you don't always manage to sort of merge them together. So you have that on one side, and the same for ladies, and they probably even more that role of mom and the role of wife. And if they has wife, then it's even worse, I would say, because they've got no outside interest to keep them sort of more, at least on a certain path.
Sure.
And sometimes I've heard comments about ladies who just go for lunches and go to the gym with their girlfriends and stuff like that. And people look at them and like, well, they should be at home looking after the kids or something, or do whatever. And I disagree with that, because that's how you keep your identity. That's how you keep your connection, because otherwise you just end up having those roles, like I'm the mom, I'm the wife, I'm this person if I work, for example. But who are you? When is your me time in a way? And so not only if you are the weakest person in the relationship, you will try to morph. No, you won't try to morph. Sorry, I rewind that. You will unconsciously morph into the other person and aligning more to what they like, to how they do things, to be liked by the family, all those kind of stuff, arranging. And when slowly we just lose our identity, because there's nothing we do by ourselves. It's always in conjunction with the family, as you just said. Let's talk to my wife, let's talk to my husband before I can do this. You don't feel that you got the freedom to do things, because yes, they are obligation. I understand that, and it's great to consult the person first. But I think if you put the rules of engagement, i.e. the boundaries in place initially, but as you said, at 19, you don't even know what that could be. Then you go, right, this is how I am, this is what I like, and I like to have a bit of time for myself. So I like to do meditation, and I like that time for myself. I like to go for a long walk, sometimes by myself. You're more than welcome to come, but there's time where I like to do it by myself. And I like to have a weekend here and there with my friends, and, once, twice a year and stuff like that. And there was things like, even myself, I was like, no, I'm not liking the sound of that, which then just highlight control and so on, which is totally different. But I think at the end of the day, it's literally by cultivating stuff that are different, that's how you remain, you keep your identity.
Yeah. And and it has to be consistent, right? You gotta.
Yes, it's not like the once a year that's going to help.
Right.
It's probably more like, once a week plus, a few other things in a way. And in terms of, like, let's say, if you do your own sports, it might take a few times a week. But let's say, depending on what your hobbies are and stuff like that, it could be just less often, but it still should be, if it's like going trail walking with friends, maybe that is something that you want to do by yourself with your girlfriends or with your boyfriends, maybe once a month.
Yeah. Well, I found this article. I like lists.
Yeah.
and this one that I came across, I actually just sent it to you. 8 ways to avoid losing yourself in a relationship.
Okay.
Pretty interesting here. Number 1 they have is prioritize yourself, and I think you're just talking about that.
Yes.
Figuring out what it is that you like, and make sure that you make that a priority. Because if you're constantly not doing things, or not doing, say, activities that you're interested in, that you like to do, and you're not doing them because your partner doesn't like to do them,
because you want to do it with the partner, and if they're not interested in that, suddenly you start dropping this off because they don't want to come along with me, or
right. And then you can completely just you forget that it was even a passion of yours to begin with.
Totally.
And I think in my case personally, when I was coming out of my relationship, like, I had to discover all over again what the hell I even liked. Like, I don't even know. People would ask me, so what do you like to do? I seriously, like, the first few months, I didn't even have any answers. I don't know what I like to do.
And that's what I discover with a lot of clients, because they've not allowed themselves in, like, stuff that they like. They end up, like, I had a client a week ago send me a message. It was the first time in 20 years that she'd gone away by herself, and literally went and do that development course, an NLP course, right? Mm-hmm. And she was like, oh my God, I've never realized it's been 20 years since I've been by myself going somewhere and, like, totally independent. And initially she felt really uncomfortable about it. And as the time went on, and because of the content of the program as well she was doing, that pushed her into different limits, and literally started going out of her shell and stuff like that. And that's when you realize, wow, I had totally lost myself, and I wasn't allowing myself to do those things because I was always with the husband.
That's awesome. So, what did you do in terms of if you could name like a kind of a specific technique that you used to help her overcome this? Because something I really want to bring to the forefront as we continue to have more discussions on this is NLP, because you and I are both NLP practitioners,
Yep.
and it's a very, very powerful tool that you can use to modify your behavior. And for those that haven't heard, know what NLP is, it's neuro linguistic programming. The neural, obviously meaning the neurology in your body, linguistic for language, programming, just programming.
Repatterning things, yeah.
Yeah. So is there any specific kind of little quick scenario you can tell on?
Well, because for her there was quite a lot of different phases to go through, I think it would be I'm not sure I would want to be presumptuous here and say, oh, she used that technique or that technique. I think it was just an evolution. And because she did a training with John Grinder and the New Code, who's obviously the co-founder of so I don't know what he's got in his New Code, which is slightly different. So I'm not entirely sure which technique she used, but I know there was definitely processes. Like it's almost like every day she was using a different technique to almost, move forward so there was potentially some timeline therapy about, what happened, and it all kind of started 25 years old, which is something we had done in a different way before as well. But she knew like it almost started from that point and then move forward and do some other things. And yes, so it's
being able to go in and essentially change the story, right?
It's about changing the story.
It's about changing the story because we all have these stories in our head that come from past experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Those stories are telling us who we are, who we should be, the way we should be acting, and it's not necessarily true, right? Live in the present moment and create for the future. It's just a completely different story.
Totally
completely different program.
Exactly. So, but it was just fabulous to see her coming to her own, via the work she's done there. It was kind of complementary to what we all started together. It was just like proving to herself and allowing herself through a different context and in a group to be truly herself and drop the mask and see that she wasn't being judged, being herself.
Right.
And literally, and finding herself again, because that's the work we've done together. But that was like almost like the proof in the pudding that this was okay, and so she could do exactly the same at work in a way.
Right. That's awesome.
So and also when you start losing your identity, right? When you've been long term in a relationship and you lose your identity, because as I said, you're a mum, you're dad, you are the husband or the wife, you are this person at work, or what happened is you almost find, because you've morphed, you almost find yourself in others. So you no longer functioning by like in your own way. You're no longer having your own critical thinking. You're no longer having your own opinion. It's always like a kind of, I agree with them in a way, or it's kind of, and whoever, as I said, has the upper hand will probably influence a bit more. But when you do that, it's basically when codependency starts.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way you're looking for validation from others to
right.
Reassure you that you're on the right path, that what you're doing is right, and as a woman, I would say you tend to put yourself, and I'm sorry to say, Derek, but you tend to put yourself last on the ladder of priorities, like literally last. So you'd put the kids first, probably the husband after, and then whatever else after, and then maybe it's time left, you might put yourself back on the map, maybe. But many and I think I've coached equally the same amount of men versus women, but I have noticed that literally guys, it's even if they've put the kids first, then they might be second.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I can agree with that. I mean, in a lot of cases, the woman is taking care of the household
On top,
or at least,
sort of expected as well, which is a cultural behavior, like a
that is a
cultural
cultural
bias.
Yeah, that's absolutely I don't know if it's cultural. I guess it's cultural. I mean,
It's a
it's so
patriarchal way of functioning. That's so it's been going on for millennia, right?
yeah. I mean, I think that's starting to change.
Yes, it
It is
does.
starting to change a lot, and that's a good thing.
I mean, my parents were very equal, to be honest with you, in task at home. Very equal, which has been great. So it's been a great example for me. Did I apply it? No.
No, you didn't apply it. So you took on everything yourself? Is that what it is? That's interesting.
Yes.
So you grew up in a home environment where both parents took on responsibilities equally.
Yes.
But yet it seems like to me the external environment was more powerful of an example than even your parents were, who raised you.
Yes, and that's been fascinating to
That's
observe.
wild. Yeah.
So I suppose the circumstances were that if I wasn't getting involved, then things were not getting done.
You need to get them done yourself.
So, but literally, if I wasn't doing dinner, I would have had cereals for dinner every night.
Then you weren't eating.
So that wasn't really working for me.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I think in a lot of these situations, and yours may be a good example, is when women they take on that responsibility. They take it on, they put it all on their shoulders, and then they just carry it, and they carry it for years and years, and then finally they wake up one day and they're like, damn, I've been carrying this all this time. What am I even doing? And then you can actually even have, and I'm not saying this is the case with you, but you can have resentment against your partner simply because it's almost like they let you do what you're doing. Why didn't they step in, and give you that break or give you that time, that space that you need, whatever the case be?
Yeah, but that's where I would take full responsibility. I allowed it to happen.
You allowed it to happen.
So that's when people say, oh, they let me do everything. I'm like, hold on a second. I allow it to happen. I never said, can we share? Or find another way to do it so I'm not always involved with it. Right. So that's where we can't really play the victim sort of mode. And it's like, look, if you had clear boundaries, maybe in fact, this relationship would have not lasted if that was just the whole basis of functioning, right? Because then you'd be like, I'm sorry, I can't tolerate that because I'm not going to do it.
That's deep. That's deep right there. That is really deep. That's very true too. And I think that's a good perspective to look at it as well. Like, that's a very strong possibility.
So, and that's the thing. It's like taking ownership of, if this has happened, well, you've let it happen, clearly. I mean, I'm talking about myself. And, well, now you're aware, just make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah. That is super important. Becoming aware and then making the changes.
And that's when you get into a relationship, and obviously when you're young, as you said, you don't know who you are, you don't always know what you want. But when you're a bit older, and hopefully you find yourself again, if having those conversations is super important. Said, look, I need that space to be myself. You got attracted to me because I am like this. And if we don't, and I've been attracted to you because you're like this. But if you start not being like this, then I won't feel the attraction anymore. Or it's not a conditional thing, but it's more like that is what attracted me to you in the first place. So it's almost, you don't want to say don't change, because we all change, right? We all grow different, and but it's almost like by having those conversations, that's what I love about it. Your confidence, the fact you're independent, you do your own thing, this attracts me, for example. Or it could be, I love the fact that you're so smart about that specific interest of yours, and you're like seems so passionate about it that it just takes you over. And I love when you're in that mode, or and it's about taking into account that this person of absolutely, it could be, I don't know, horse riding, or it could be whatever different things it could be. And when those people are in their world, they're just like totally blossoming. And when they come home, they obviously have that blossom sort of, energy
Aura.
around them.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things on this list too is don't replace I with we.
There's a place for both.
There is a place for both.
There's a place for both, because if you're in a couple, and we all meant to be in couples, it's just to find balance. It's finding the fine balance, because you are a we. I mean, unless you have an agreement that, we are a loose we, then it can imply other behaviors or activities which some people want. And this is then a different conversation to be have. And when you hear about all the type of different relationship that you have nowadays, open relationship, and all that kind of stuff, it depends where you're coming from. Because is that something that doesn't sit well with you, and you start saying yes, that's when you've lost your identity.
Have you ever worked with a couple where there's always one answering for the both of them?
Oh yes, I may have even been one of those.
It's like, someone asks you, hey, do you like chocolate? And then your boyfriend leans up and says, yes, we do like chocolate.
Yeah. No, I probably wasn't that bad, but I would have probably jumped in to just like answer a question, because, just the nature I was.
So you were the one that would...
it depends. It would have not been like a we. It could have been like, oh yeah, he does that all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have been guilty of that as well.
Don't compromise too much.
Don't compromise too much. Mm-hmm. Again, it's a matter of conversation to be have initially, and say, look, that's what works for me, and that's what doesn't work for me. And that's why discussing values is so important, because even the same value, if your definition is different, what does family means to you? Oh yeah, I'm very family oriented. Yeah, me too. Oh, brilliant. I love that guy.
It's a match.
Exactly. But you haven't actually discussed what family meant. Yeah. It's a word. It's like chocolate cake. I could tell I love chocolate cake.
Yeah.
Your idea of chocolate cake and my idea of chocolate cake, I'm happy to pay $1 million. It would be very different.
I mean, do you like chocolate on chocolate? Is it chocolate on vanilla? Like what type of, you know what I mean?
It's not even that. It's more like, I know exactly what I have in my head when I'm talking about chocolate cake. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a French thing. It's going to be quite fine cuisine, whatever. Would I find that in the US? Maybe yes, in a, fancy restaurant or whatever. Would I find that in the UK? Again, I would have to go to a fancy restaurant, because...
Oh, you English people, you're so bougie.
No, but in terms of, I wouldn't find that on the shelf, or on the shelf. Yeah, on the shelf in a shop, because that is not what the kind of stuff that is being sold here.
So for your birthday, if you ask your significant other for a chocolate cake, you better be specific then.
Exactly. That would be anyone, right? Anyone you put into a room, you ask for chocolate. If you talk chocolate cake, everyone will have their own idea of what chocolate cake. And it could be like the chocolate cake that their mum made.
Right.
There's that special thing in their head,
For sure.
But that's just to show an example of how one word or two words could be taken very differently.
Absolutely. So compromise too much is just like, What is too much? Too much is if you're compromising all the time.
Compromising too much is losing yourself, basically. So
Losing
when you say
yourself,
yes,
yeah.
yes, yes, so you become a people pleaser as well. But it's about say yes and no, but being true to yourself. It's like, no, actually, I don't want to do that. You do it by yourself,
Mhm.
and the other person is okay with it.
And it's completely okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it should be.
It's like,
Um,
do you wanna, go and do this? No, actually, I'm tired. I'd rather stay home versus forcing yourself to go out because, that will make your partner happy.
yeah.
But maybe you've had a hard week and maybe you're really on your knees and maybe a bath is what you need with candles and maybe watching a bit of mindless TV. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say that sounds really specific.
Not saying I've applied that to me before, but because I would be the one going out. But just using as an example, for example.
Yeah, well, the next one on the list is do things without your partner.
Yes. And that's where you need trust, and that's when you see like a balanced partnership and a balance, because let's say if your partner, regardless of gender, love doing 100 miles trail run, well, I wouldn't be expected to follow. And I love my stuff. 100 miles way too long.
See you when you get back.
Exactly. I'll do something. I might go for a 4 hours bike ride instead, but I'm never gonna, you know what I mean? So it's
like enjoy,
yeah,
honey.
exactly. Enjoy. Don't force me to come along.
I'll have some Gatorade for you when you get back. Or something.
So yeah, so that, for example, is respecting that you may have totally different ways of doing things. Or it could be like, oh, I love dancing tango or salsa, but obviously, let's say you're not a dancer.
Mhm.
So I'm going to maybe a Thursday night, a club where I belong to, a place where I go to, and every Thursday night I go to salsa, and I may have a dancing partner there, and who I do those things every Thursday. It's like, well, it's your stuff.
Now, do you think the majority of relationships have that type of security that you're talking about?
No, I think there isn't, but it's because potentially the level of security in the first place, and it depends how far advanced you're in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Early days, it tends to be kind of like, well, you want to be, and that's the thing as well. Early days, you want to be together all the time. That's when you can start losing yourself. And then once you've been, used to that, you've kind of maybe cut off some, and it's in that early part that you really need to establish the boundaries that, although I love being with you, it's still important for me, and I want to be with you 24/7. I still need to do this, and this is important to me, and that is important to me. And so if you do it right from the start, then it's not an interruption and then suddenly restart a few years down the line, or never restart, as we said.
That's a very, very good point. That's a very good point. It does kind of matter when that stuff is introduced, because say you've been together for 10 years or something, right? And you've just done everything together. You've never done anything really individually. And then all of a sudden you say to your partner, you know what, Gaelle? I know you don't like dancing, but I really have the urge to dance. And, there's this, salsa, merengue thing happening on Thursday nights.
And I'm going to go there.
You'd be like, go. After 10 years, all of a sudden it comes up. You're like, well, you haven't been dancing for the last 10 years. Why? It wouldn't bring up just a little bit of, it would bring up a little bit of.
Yeah, it would check up things, definitely. And
Yeah.
And then,
but if you make it known from the start, like,
this is what I do,
salsa dancing, and and you continue to do it, then, like you said, it's like, this is who that person is. That's a part of who that person. You either accept it, or you don't.
That's exactly that. And also, it's true as well. Come to those timing. Let's say if you feel disconnected from your couple, having this kind of stuff, and then suddenly you have fun with like an unrelated person, partner, whatever, because dancing, for example, is quite a engaging sort of hobby.
Especially if you're
Then
dancing
yes,
salsa merengue.
exactly.
Those are my moves right there, by the way, too. That's how I do it.
But that's the thing. You can then starting developing a connection, which could be a fake connection with someone, because it's becoming like a fun environment, and you're literally letting your hair down, being a bit more of yourself, and then that person is being more of themselves as well, which doesn't mean real life outside of that class or that time they're actually matching. But because you get then a bit kind of carried away, it's like, what, I'm really having a lot of fun, I'm really feeling connected to that person more than actually with my partner. That's when things can go wrong sometimes, because people are letting their hair down because they've not looked after themselves for so long. And when they start to reconnect with themselves, suddenly you're like, that's when you exactly did you said what you said. Resentment and all that kind of stuff start popping up, because you're gonna
Because
have a bit of check on life.
I can hear some people right now, maybe that's listening to this, like, yeah, no way. There's no way in hell I'm letting my man go to dance salsa Thursday nights with, your imagination can just take it anywhere, right?
Yes. But let's say if you'd met at salsa on a Thursday night, you might carry on doing the salsa on Thursday night, and maybe for a year or two when you got the kids, you might not be able to, but you try to get a babysitter or something, because it's a non-negotiable. That's your Thursday night thing. But you started it together, so that would be like an activity that you do together, for example. And then, that is a different, again, way of looking at it.
Yes, agreed. Having boundaries.
We just talked about it, didn't we?
Yep, we just talked about that. That's from the start.
From the start.
Having a boundary.
And that's where most of us lose themselves. So unless you're really clear about who you are and what you want, and obviously the younger you are when you get in a relationship, the less probably clear you are, because you're still developing as a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as you grow older, obviously, and when you got the second chance or third chance, depending, right? We'll always have chances, right?
Yeah.
That's when it's really important to have all those conversations, because it's like, look, this is what I do. I like to go fishing, and I go fishing twice or 3 times a year with the lads. We go for 4 days, and we might go just travel around the world in just random destination.
Right.
And the person,
it's not hard to see how, when you start a relationship off, not really knowing a whole lot, and then you're constantly making the sacrifices. I mean, both parties making the sacrifices to kind of please each other.
Yep.
Or at least what you think pleases. And then when you do that for so long, and then you understand that that's when you've lost, right? That's when the identity is really starting to be lost.
Yes.
And then so you find yourself through, I guess there's really all kinds of different ways. It could be anything, and you just understand at one point that, wow, you're just kind of on different pages there.
Yes.
So, yes. Is that a plane?
It's a helicopter, I'm afraid.
What do you guys got going on over there?
It happens quite a bit. So unlucky that right now we have that. It's probably quiet at 5 o'clock, but 12 o'clock your time. Anyway, hopefully it will go soon. But it just usually hunting the baddies.
Oh, okay.
Especially when they're going around like this. Anyway, I hope.
All right. So the last two here are communicate and stay true to yourself.
Yes.
I think communicate it's pretty obvious.
And you just mentioned it before as well, which is really important, which is about if you don't, like, you get to know each other and you try to make some compromise, as you said, and if actually you don't jump straight away into a relationship, but you're gonna have that chat, and sort of inclined to see that you like each other, the longer you take to actually getting to know each other, then you don't have to jump in a relationship and straight away compromise, because you've had already the right conversations. Like, I like doing that fishing trip or those fishing trip 4 times a year. Do you like it? You don't like it? That's one thing. Or it could be as I want to climb the Everest one day. The risk is high. That's something that you accept. It's something you don't accept. It's something that you're totally against, and you're like, well, you're on your own. I'm not interested. Because in a sense that, is it 1 in 6 that don't come back from Everest climbing? It's quite high, right?
Yeah.
And you
Let's
pay.
talk about your insurance policy. Is that up to date?
But it's kind of the lumps, and the lump sum you're paying for the privilege potentially is quite high as well, right? But
yes.
that's what I'm talking about. If you kind of get to know someone like that, and quite extreme in their sports and stuff, and that's something that doesn't sit well with you, then being honest, but yeah, I really like that person, but this is actually a big thing for me, and I don't think I can actually cope with it and literally accept this. And it's being honest with you, I think. How far of the compromise do you want to make, or how much you want to accept? And if you already do that in the start, I think it will really, really help in the first place to not actually go with a person that might not be as adapted to what you want or what you're after in a relationship.
So what do you say to those out there that are in a relationship right now and they feel like they've lost themselves?
Well, I would suggest to them to, if they want to, they can come and work with me if they wanted to. But it's more if they don't want to do that, it's starting to look at what are their hobbies. Do they have any hobbies? Do they have actually passion that they actually actively search and do? If they're not, that's the first thing I would start with, because they'll find pleasure, and by finding and connecting to that pleasure of doing those things that they enjoy, they will kind of start being happier and reconnecting with themselves. And obviously you might need to have some conversation depending on what the activity is.
Yeah, and of course, yeah, that's true.
But it shouldn't be used as an excuse to get out of the relationship, or to just because some people might just look at it and say, right, okay, I'm using that, and then do whatever they want to do, you know what I mean? But not being truthful, actually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
More like an avoidance behavior.
Yeah. So almost using as the loss of identity as almost like an excuse or a reason to go in a different direction.
Yeah, potentially, and not being honest about it. And it's hard. It's not an easy conversation to have, because it's like, I've lost myself. I don't know who I am. And that in itself, to just the realization of that, is so painful, because you're like, my God, I don't know what I want. I don't know who I am. That in itself, when you come to that realization, I know I was in tears. And I had a recent conversation with my mum, and she said, I still do not understand to this day what happened to you. Wow. And she said, you were the most determined, driven, knew what you wanted in life, and literally almost like be so, how would I describe it? She said, I had no doubt with you. I just knew you'd go anywhere, you'd do anything. You're like, it was on your own terms. She said, you were 3 days old. So I knew then that everything was on your own term. It was either you follow me or you out, in a way. Yeah. So she to these days, till that, and that's a conversation we had like literally 3 days ago. She said, I don't know what happened to you. I
She
could have
means
never
at the
thought.
time you were in the relationship? Is that what
Yeah.
she's...
No, in life, generally, just
Mm.
in life. I knew when I knew I wanted to do something, I was doing it, and that was it. And she said, I don't know what happened down the line that made you just start suddenly being kind of swallowed in those relationships and just lose your
Mm.
identity.
It's very easy to do.
It is, but it's subtle. That's the thing. And when you realize, sometimes too late. And
Yeah.
depending to which extent it's gone to.
Sure.
So
Wow. That's that's really good stuff. Losing your identity, finding your identity, so working on that the solution or the process of finding your identity while you're in a relationship is it's not always pretty.
no, just take more me time. I think it starts with having me time. And number, like even friends of mine, oh, I don't have 5 minutes for myself.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, so what do you want to show the world? What do you want to show your kids? What do you want to show, do you want to show the worst of you? Or do you want to show the best of you? Because if you take time for yourself, you will start showing the best of you versus showing what is left of you.
Wow. I think that was just a very, very poignant quote. You might need to repeat again. Trademark it.
Do that. I love that.
Say that one more time.
So, do you want to show to the world, and knowing that kids, sponge everything and repeat what they see, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are leaving yourself at the bottom of the pile and not having that me time to reconnect to yourself, do you want to show to the world, and that's your kids, that's also the partner and anyone else involved, do you want to show the best of you, or do you want to show what is left of you?
Ooh, man, what's best of you or what's left of you? It's really that simple.
Yep.
It's really,
and that's true. It's literally it's what's left of you, because as time accumulates, there's nothing left of you. You just run an empty tank all the time.
Yeah.
And that's how you lose your identity.
Absolutely. And you can lose your relationship too as a result of that as well.
Yes,
because
you're no longer the person that the person fell in love with.
Right. And that's having personally gone through that, I can tell you it's pretty earth-shattering.
Devastating. Yeah.
That going through that whole discovery process. So I think that's really good information for people to take to heart.
Yes.
You want to show people, the best of you or what's left of you, and getting back with your internal self, figuring out what it is that you're missing from your life that you're not providing yourself, because it's not going to be provided from anybody else.
No,
your happiness.
Exactly. That's
certainly
exactly
isn't
that.
going to be.
No one can give it to you. It comes from within. So that's why me time is so important. And when you get that me time and that breathing space in a way, then you can start thinking, what can I do for myself to fill in my cup?
Mm-hmm.
What are the passion and hobbies I forgot about, which make me feel excited and happy, and so I can be the best mom and I can be the best spouse or, partner.
And also, if you're expecting that, your partner all the time to fulfill your happiness, to make you happy, again, I can tell you from personal experience that's not going to work. Your happiness, you've got to find it within yourself.
Yeah, it's impossible. You cannot give that responsibility to someone.
And it's not fair. It's not fair.
100%
to that person.
Yeah.
Agree 100%. Well, I think that's a perfect way to end the segment. Great stuff. Ways to avoid losing yourself in a relationship. It's great having you on, Gaelle.
Thank you.
Can you give out your information on how people can get in touch with you if they want to ask about your coaching,
Yes.
either for individuals or relationship.
Yeah, totally. I'm happy to provide that, and it doesn't need to take forever to do it, but it can accelerate when you do it with someone, because they can really, you've got not only sort of some of the, you really help yourself in terms of identifying who you are, what your values are, all those things, and also accountability, because you can't escape anymore.
Right. And working with the coach really just helps you. I mean, the coach isn't doing the work for you. They're helping you, they're guiding you through discovering the process. And it's just easier when you have somebody outside of yourself that is professional as well, and has been there, done that, that can help guide you, to where you want to go, where you want to
Yes,
be, or discovering that.
it's exactly that. You have to want to change, because if you don't want to change your situation, then no one can. And you have to take that ownership, and literally, it's not a massive science. It's just pointing you in the right direction for what is going to work with you, what's really going to be, what might work with you might not work with the next person. And that is literally, so having that intuitive knowledge that this is going to work really well, and this is going to be counteracted in a way, and so you just like, no, it's no point in going there, this is going to be. And some people like accountability, some people do not like accountability. You don't want to be a kid and whatever. So it's about really be navigating these things, be totally adapted to what your client needs, and fast forwarding them, like fast tracking them in a way. And I wish at the time I would have been fast track, because it would have been a lot easier. But it was what it was. And, I learned by myself, and it took a lot longer. And that's why now I'm trying to help people, and I'm helping people to really
I was
just
just getting ready to say, that's why you're in the position you are.
exactly. And
So to help other people not take as long.
exactly. And I know I can move a lot of things within a space of even 6 weeks. And if people want to like a fast move, they can do that within 6 weeks. If they want to be more in depth, then obviously, you carry on longer, because there's so much more to look at. But there's some of those changes can be done not even within 6 weeks, but that would be the minimum that you want to see to kind of see the evolution as well, and make sure it's solid, because that otherwise it's not as potent as it could be.
Yeah. All
Anyway,
right.
thank
Well,
you
great
so much
stuff,
again.
Gaelle. Again, thank you
That's me.
for joining me on my show here today. I'll get your information put on the video, and I'll do this so I can like scroll across, because I always wanted to do that. Like right here, and I can pretend that I'm seeing it.
Yes.
All right. So we'll get your information up there so people can get in touch with you and your website and all that good stuff. And until next time, once again, thank you for joining Raw Emotion, another episode with Gaelle Lebray. And I hope you guys have a great, wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.